John Goodrich from the Summit Road Society. Did I not get that right? Is that not right? Oh. Oh, sorry. No, sorry, sit down. Sorry. I made a mistake. I thought they said they had 4,000 people at the meeting. Sorry. Right.
Right. Thank you for this opportunity to talk to our submission on the long-term plan. I'm John Goodrich. I'm Secretary of the Summit Road Society, and this is Jeremy Agar. He's Vice President. You've seen the written submission, and I've nothing really to add to that. I'd just like to highlight some of the main points. The submission was in three separate parts. A bit about the Port Hills Parks and Reserves in general, something about the Summit Road, and then something about funding for some of the local conservation groups. The Summit Road Society has no suggestions for any more specific projects or changes to the way the City Council manages the Port Hills. What we would like to see is business as usual. The Council should be very proud of this fantastic asset on our doorstep, where we've got continued improvements in biodiversity, we've got a large network of walking tracks, we've got some world-class mountain biking and road cycling. So we urge the Council to continue to recognise the importance locally, nationally and even internationally of the Port Hills, and to ensure that there's sufficient funding to continue to do everything that makes the Port Hills what they are, which is to continue to plant native species, which are important both for the biodiversity and things like slope stability, to continue to try to eradicate invasive weeds which affect the biodiversity, to continue to carry out animal pest control for possums, mustelids and rats, and to ensure that the network of tracks is maintained. I think another important thing here is we'd like an assurance that the Council can continue to support and advise volunteers and voluntary groups such as ours, particularly through the Port Hills Rangers. And just an example there, as I understand it, in the last planting season there was something like 23,000 trees planted on the Port Hills, and of those 4,000 were planted by volunteers. Now our submission, we are the Summit Road Society, our submission is focused on the Port Hills, but we do have similar concerns about similar work on biodiversity, tracks and that sort of thing across the whole of the peninsula. The second part was in respect of the Summit Road itself. We feel that there's an opportunity, and I hate this word, to brand the Port Hills and their importance and the recreational opportunities that there are by the way that the Summit Road itself is managed. In 2009, the Summit Road Protection Authority produced their paper, A New Vision for the Summit Road in the Port Hills, a heritage road through a park. In 2009, and it suggested a single management plan for the administration of the road and all the associated parks and reserves. And we'd urge the Council to look at the authority's paper again and to consider its adoption. And we think there's a great opportunity in this as a first step for the Council not to reopen the section of the Summit Road that's currently closed to vehicles and open to pedestrians and cyclists. The feedback we've received has been incredibly positive about the experience that gives people. It means it gives it a much more sort of wilderness experience up there, and the feedback has been very, very good. And this could be a first logical step to this sort of heritage road concept. The final part of the submission is really in respect of funding, and we, the Summit Road Society, really appreciate the fact that we're now funded from the council budget, and this is a major contribution to be able to continue carry out our activities. But I spoke about business as usual, and it really only is enough for us to do business as usual, and there is much more that we could do, even with a very modest amount of funding. And as you probably appreciate, we are one of 5 groups that are funded in this way by the council. For instance, we could increase and improve our animal pest control, we could increase the amount of planting, we could even recruit more volunteers, and we like to feel that we can support the rangers, particularly in a time of decreasing budgets, and we could spend more time on education and advocacy about the Port Hills. All these groups that are funded by the council fulfil a number of council objectives relating to the environment and to biodiversity, recreation, education and volunteering. And just another, for instance, in the case of the Summit Road Society, we carry out around 1,000 volunteer hours a year annually on council parks and reserves, plus another couple of thousand on our own reserves. So we would request the council to consider increasing the funding to the Summit Road Society and the other funded conservation groups. And of course, we'd be prepared to sit down and discuss in detail what that would actually mean in terms of additional work and our activities. And I just give Jeremy the opportunity to add anything if he wishes.
Yes, as far as the road is concerned, that would obviously be vary according to what part of the Summit Road it is and the very varied needs of people. We don't necessarily envisage a complete stoppage of cars because people have will enjoy Sunday drives and things like that. But certainly an emphasis on cyclists and pedestrians, as John has said, is very much the feedback we're getting that people are wanting. I think the merits of our case really speak for itself. They meet all the council's main policies. I'd just like to, I've just done a bit of mental arithmetic. There's something like 50,000 Port Hills visitors a year, and the funding we get is equivalent to 2 cents per person per year. So, you know, make it 3 cents, maybe.
I've been gathering support for your submission not to reopen the section of the Summit Road currently closed, with earlier submissions from other cycling interests and personal representation from my husband first thing this morning when I read it to him. So I think that we're going to get some information on that. Andrew, Tim?
And in relation to that proposal, presumably the maximum part of the road that you would be looking at closing would be from, I think it's Broadleaf Lane near Mount Pleasant Road to Victoria Park. Would it be that whole length? And just any information on the type of traffic and the amount of traffic that the road carried pre-earthquake. I'm guessing it would be leisure traffic rather than people going from point to point.
Yes, thank you. We were just picking up on something that we have discussed on and off over the years in this paper by the Protection Authority. I mean, there are no proposals there except the proposal to manage the road in a way that showcases the Port Hills and what the opportunities are. There, I understand there is some support for some limited closures and restrictions from some of the landowners up there to which would hopefully prevent the boy racer element and that sort of thing. So, but as Jeremy said, it's not about closing. It's just that we have a section that is closed that is probably going to cost a lot of money to get up to a standard that would suit vehicular access, and we feel that the money would be far better spent elsewhere. Yeah, there's no real need.
The cyclists love it. The cyclists are loving it. Tim and then Glenn.
In Victoria Park, we had a huge amount of vandalism, etc. And then we've closed the road there at a certain time of night. So when people go to enjoy Victoria Park early in the morning when those gates open, the toilets aren't kicked to smashed or anything like that. With the extra recreation use, especially say at the top of Rapaki and others, would you see support in closing the Summit Road at a certain time of night at both ends? Because one of the issues that the rangers keep telling us is that to try and keep the services like toilets, etc., in working order, they turn up in the morning or for an early walk or whatever, and they vandalise. Anything up there is pretty well destroyed on a regular basis. So to improve the asset for the people of Christchurch and using that asset, do you see support for closing the Summit Road, say from a certain time at night to reopening in the morning?
That was certainly one of the main reasons given that people have told us to stop all the vandalism, and there's no problem actually with the residents there. There's all sorts of ways in which they can have full access. That won't be an issue, I wouldn't have thought. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. We had the island and up